This is Guyana 411. This week we focus on communities, the challenges some face, cultures and lifestyles, and their links with the past. Stay tuned. There are many communities where development seems to be taking place at a very slow rate. This is especially true for hinterland villages. Sometimes it takes a joint effort to improve the quality of life for residents in such communities.
Almost every community you visit, whether on the coastline or in the interior, residents would point to areas where there's a need for development. In a country the size of Guyana and with a struggling economy, satisfying the needs of all communities can be quite a challenge. But when residents, non-governmental organizations, and the state come together, the challenge does not appear quite so daunting. That was the experience at Akawini, an Amerindian village in Region 2.
You have strong leaders. I know the pride that flows through the veins of its people. I see it in the faces of all of you today. Therefore, I'm confident that you will not take this opportunity for granted. Houses are a necessity, and they will bring you comfort and keep your family safe. The boats and cassava mills, however, are tools. Their functions are to make your lives better. But tools don't work on their own. Good workers are needed to get optimum benefits.
The project has provided the opportunity for the residents to become more self-sufficient. This is seen as an investment in the community, one where the residents are responsible for its success.
We realized that there was a need, a desperate need rather, for housing. We also realized that there was a need to improve their transportation facilities, what they had in place, and also to have some economic development. The Akawini Community Development Project consists of the construction of 27 houses and sanitation blocks. The houses are 20 by 15, they're wooden structure. The sanitary blocks consist of outdoor toilets and bathrooms. It also included the purchasing and donation of 4 cassava machines, the cassava mill rather. These were done to help to boost the community as it relates to their production of the cash rate, the cassava bread, and so forth. We also built 2 boats, a passenger boat and a cargo boat.
For such projects where the state, residents, and organizations collaborate to improve the lives of the people, sustainability depends on the people caring for the things they received.
The cost of the project, the 18 homes, the boats, the mills and everything, is approximately 42 million Guyana dollars. So a lot of money is being put into the project. I trust that you care the boats, you take very good care of them, take care of your mills, and I know those beneficiaries of the homes, I know you take care of your homes. Food to the Poor will assist if there's a need for some paint from time to time. Once there is paint and we have paint, we will give some assistance. So I'd just like to wish you all the best. And it's probably not the last time you will be seeing me. I probably will come in with some of the other project officers from time to time, wherever there's a need.
In many instances, the success of such project also depends on the support of local authorities.
With proper monitoring and evaluation, much more community participation, much more stakeholder engagement. The RDC certainly would have a role to play in terms of maybe building capacity to offer whatever resources and support it can to ensure that this project is not only sustained, but that it be improved and other models can be implemented within your community and maybe in other parts of the region.
Thank God for the Food for the Poor, that they answer our call and the previous council's call, and now we have 27 houses being set up in a scheme fashion. And so we have that to benefit 27 family within this village. So I want to say truly, that was well done. by the previous village council, and well done by Food for the Poor. Thank you very much.
Food for the Poor has been working in Guyana since 1991, delivering food and other basic items to Guyana's poor. It is now the leading non-governmental organization providing relief to the people of Guyana. This project will benefit the more than 900 residents of Akwini.
Not all communities in Guyana fare equally well. While some prosper and grow, others remain impoverished, their development impeded by a multitude of factors. This next piece looks at the factors impeding development in impoverished or depressed communities, and the approaches being targeted to bring about comprehensive solutions.
What are distressed communities and how are they identified? The indicators are economic, physical, and sociological. They include high dropout rates among young adults, high rates of unemployment, crime, incarceration, substance abuse, poverty, teenage pregnancy, vacant and abandoned structures or land, poorly maintained residential and commercial properties, overcrowded housing, gang activity, and the lack of business investment. Sounds familiar? We're all aware of these communities. Tiger Bay, All Boys Town, and La Penitence in Georgetown, just to name a few. For too long, poverty has tightened its grip on these communities, keeping many of the residents in a stranglehold. Improving the quality of life in such areas has over the last few decades become a challenge of growing importance. However, it is now a priority for the new administration, one that has set first and foremost on its agenda the elimination of extreme poverty. New initiatives, which will be done through a collaborative and consultative effort with leaders of the communities and the state, will place emphasis on sustainability of such development by empowering the people to tackle inherent problems that are common in these depressed communities. Problems such as a low educational attainment level and the lack of a high school diploma severely limit opportunities for employment and social upward mobility. Students in depressed neighborhoods face a number of social factors which limit their educational achievement, issues that the Education Ministry will be seeking to address.
The ambition of the ministry is to have education reach all the children. To the extent that you have communities where they have these problems, what we have to do is intensify the welfare program so that we need more welfare officers. It's no good having, I believe, clusters of schools to which you assign one welfare officer, so we have an inadequacy of welfare officers. So we have to be able to work within the communities and to deal with these children, many of whom are in a distressing state, and ensure that they benefit from everything the schools have to offer. What you find in these communities is because of the pressures from within the communities, you have high levels of absenteeism and so on. So the children are in effect not benefiting from really the only thing that could really lift them out of that condition that they're in. The more depressed the community, the more in need of an educational intervention it is. And we have to ensure that we adopt whatever measures are necessary to address these particular children, to ensure that they attend school, that they benefit from school, that to the extent that they have problems that are not problems from within the school but from within the family, within the homes, within the communities, we have to find ways to address that so that their school experience can reinforce the other things we're trying to do. So it's going to require an intensification of welfare work. I have started a process of consulting with the communities. I was in Escobar last Sunday. I'm going throughout the country, and I'm intending, of course, to go to the communities that most need the upliftment and encouragement. So what I can tell you is that it's high on my agenda, because I want to ensure that we bring about a level of, access to education that is available to every single Guyanese.
Pregnancy is a major reason why many young women drop out of school. In depressed communities, teenage pregnancy and unplanned parenthood compound the hardship for females. Then there is the issue of drug and crimes in the community. Drug abuse and related crimes only serve to worsen conditions in these communities, and that they result in unusually high incarceration rates for residents, particularly those who are young males.
People in the community of themselves, you have to really work with them. For example, East Penitence, one might fight that you went to the back, you need to come to the front, you need to come to the middle. It's like, I'm going to get there. At the end of the day, I'm not seeing the front repentance and back repentance. I have to look at it as a whole community. So you even have to get them within their communities to appreciate each other and form their little committee there that you could work with. That and all is very challenging, and I mean, coming from where they're coming from, neglected after so many years, you will find all these different challenges in the community. But generally, I would like to see in the end of the 5 years at least, you know, you must have some kind of sporting facility in the area. Their area there that was identified, you could develop to become a community center. And at that community center, if it got some kind of level of training that will be taking place and all of that, it's a huge challenge, but I really want to work with people in the community to turn it around, you know, and make it a landmark.
The lack of affordable housing is another issue for residents of these communities. What is the plan for the new Ministry of Communities in this regard?
We'll be actively thinking about solutions. One of the solutions I'm thinking about is how can we access perhaps partnerships with banks, or perhaps not banks, but banks, or perhaps partnerships with other stakeholders to help us access funding so that we can give them something affordable. Besides that, I'm thinking along giving them maybe starter homes and also, if possible, we can get them like a house in which they can get us a little small help from food for the poor. That way we can give them a push start in life. But I know that they do need some help. Although we want to give a house to everybody, we have to be concerned about those persons. I'm also thinking about looking for land that within the environment that people wouldn't have too far to walk. You know, people living in Georgetown wouldn't really want to go too far away from Georgetown because of schools, jobs, transportation costs. So these are factors that are influencing my thinking, and I sincerely am trying very hard to make sure I can get some other means we can help the communities. Because we need to help not only those who can afford, but also those who need to be helped.
The multifaceted nature of distressed communities, i.e. concentrated poverty, high unemployment, low income, high crime rates, low literacy levels, require addressing these issues in a multifaceted and comprehensive way. The problems affecting these areas are mutually reinforcing, each intensifying the other, making it difficult to address just one problem without simultaneously addressing a number of the others. Various interventions by government to address the challenges in depressed communities should ensure a fresh start for residents. The process has started. Recently, several ministers engaged residents of East Penitence on the crafting of a national developmental plan with emphasis on youth empowerment. The first consultation was held at the East Penitence Primary School. Several more are scheduled to be held across the country.
As Emancipation observances get underway, we focus on a unique local museum that showcases the artistry and craftsmanship of Africans and their descendants.
As Guyana joins the rest of the world in celebrating African emancipation, we take a look at the Museum of African Heritage situated at Lot 13 Barima Avenue, Georgetown.
It was the late Guyanese anthropologist Dr. Hubert Nicholson who laid the foundation for a museum dedicated to the preservation of African artifacts. During his travels to West Africa for studies and work, Dr. Nicholson managed to obtain many cultural artifacts which he kept at his home. When he decided to migrate in 1985, he donated his home and the artifacts to the government of the day and the people of Guyana.
At that time, it was the Museum of African Art and Ethnology, and that was done by the late Dr. Dennis Williams. He was the director of art. He was first at the Borough School of Art as a principal, and then he went over to the Walter Rudd Museum. From the Walter Rudd Museum, this museum came out. He would have done the ethnology part, but because of his demise, he died. We decided to remove the ethnology and rename the museum Museum of African Heritage, so that it would accommodate not only the things of Africa, but African Guyanese also.
Over the years, the museum's collection has expanded to include the works of local artists and craftspersons. The museum has also benefited from donations. These are always appreciated, according to the administrator, Jenny Daly.
We would have it in our museum. We would, before we put it out on exhibition, we normally accession it because we got to know the condition of it. If it would be okay that we put it in preservation, or we can use it right away in the museum.
The focus is to preserve and conserve the more than 200 pieces that the museum currently has in its possession.
Then we put it into storage, and that storage is downstairs where we have a small library, and the library is a reference library. We do not lend out books, but persons do come and do research, and they get their information. Likewise, we work with school children that does SBAs, and so they do visit.
The displays are not static, and they are refreshed every few months to ensure a unique experience for visitors.
We have a collection from the Juka from Suriname, and that was given to us after Carrie Festa was held in Guyana. We also have most of the artifacts there from West Africa. Sinufo, Sierra Leone, Ghana, Nigeria. We have a good set of pieces because that's what started the museum. Because we had a very good set. We got masses from different parts of West Africa mostly. We do have modern day art that like masses and these sort of things. And then, as I said, with the artists, most that you see at the back here is from them, And we work with them also, and likewise, they will keep exhibitions here.
The museum's library also serves as a base for research into reparations for slavery by a special committee headed by Dr. Eric Phillips.
Well, they're looking after mostly the African history information that they can acquire that we really don't know. And I can safely say that they are working and they are retrieving those information, but it's not out yet.
According to her, more than 50 Afrocentric groups are affiliated with the museum.
We work with them so that we can work along with them so as to retain and revitalize that traditional culture back into the village. Because there's still older folks who knows about the history, and so we work with them so that they can bring back that culture, the kwekwe, the comfort, back into the village, and we work with them on that aspect. We reach with them pretty often, and after the emancipation celebration, we all come back together at the museum here and we review work that was done out during emancipation time and celebration. We also assist them with fundings, which they're most happy about. So we have those groups that we work with.
A comprehensive program of activities has been organized for the emancipation period.
Come Monday the 3rd, we'll be having the opening of our exhibition at the National Museum at 11 o'clock. And that exhibition will be portraying the village movement. So we're doing a number of African villages in the history and what is in the village photographs, what historical buildings and so that is in the villages. So that will be on display. And maybe that will go until the end of September because September is Education Month. So we leave it up until then. August the 1st, we'll be in the National Park as part of the Emancipation Festival. And other than that, we'll be setting up exhibitions around the country in various villages that ask us, invite us, and we'll be attending activities also around the country. On the 31st, well, there's a number of activities by the Square of the Revolution, Bagottville, Hopetown. All villages keep their own activity at that time.
It is indisputable that slavery has been the most inhumane mechanism ever constructed by man, that condemned a people to over 400 years of unspeakable cruelty and brutal subjugation for which there was no respite, except through the merciful hand of death. This trade brought in excess of 10 million captured Africans to work as chattel slaves in sugar and cotton plantations throughout the Caribbean and the Americas.
Hey, what you're doing, Mr. Man?
What you're doing, Mr. Man?
You'll get nowhere with those crazy schemes.
What you're doing, Mr. Man?
Hey, what you're doing, Mr. Man?
What you're doing, Mr. Man?
Oh, your cheating ways will lead to the things
What
you're
doing, Mr. Man?
You just want to masterize while our souls you victimize.
The slave trade, dominated by France and the British Empire between the 16th to the 19th century, contributed to the economic crisis currently facing the Caribbean region. Its legacy was a population that was largely illiterate, people who had very little to call their own, villages that had almost no infrastructure, generally a people left to survive but given no support or tools to do this. While slave masters were compensated for losing property, as the slaves were described, there was no compensation for the slaves. Nothing was given to them for the cruelty and hardships they endured. There was no compensation for the people who lost everything, the African people who were brought here in chains. The heads of government for the Caribbean region had agreed to set up national committees on reparations, which will work to establish the moral, ethical, and legal case for the payment of reparations by the former colonial European countries.
3 years ago, the heads of state unanimously agreed to pursue reparations at the CARICOM level. And what that meant was that they asked each of the CARICOM states to establish nationally led reparations committees or commissions. That cascaded into Guyana, it's establishing its own national reparations committee. I was appointed chair by former President Ramatar, and we established a committee of about 16 individuals. These individuals represented organizations. So we had many African organizations, PANAF, Rastafarian, Black Forum, AGDA. We had young people involved. We had a good gender balance. And so we met from that time to today over 70 times in the Museum of African Heritage, which became our headquarters. And we executed the CARICOM terms of reference.
Today, our local reparations committee has followed through on the terms of reference as outlined by the heads of government agreement, with full support from the government.
I know there's been a great deal of activity in reparations, and to the extent that I believe that the reparations is a morally just mechanism to compensate people for what it is they have gone through. We support the reparations movement, and we'll do everything we can to facilitate.
We executed the CARICOM terms of reference, which essentially had many points, but the key points were to go back through your history, make sure that if it were to become a lawsuit, that you have a correct narrative of your history. You have defined all the evidence that would fit under the category of slavery being a crime against humanity and of indigenous genocide. So we have done that. We have written those. One of the terms of references was to identify past discriminations that have led to today's inequality in the African community. We have a 47-page document that documented 15 of those issues.
I have to commend Guyana and CARICOM for making such a bold step. Repatriation is very important because it was our ancestors who were the ones that were in the sugar field.
Right now, we are at the stage where in Guyana we turned over all of our findings to the former government in December. We always kept our opposition aware of what we were doing. And we in Guyana had a unique situation in that, unlike all the other CARICOM nations, which just met as commissioners we opened our meetings, every single one, to the public. In Guyana, for example, we found that we've been here for over 200 years. We lost over 450,000 lives prematurely, Africans. Our indigenous population was decimated. So we found a lot of things. Where we are right now, broadly though, is that we're consolidating reparation thought and thinking in the Caribbean and globally as a way of leveraging more how we will negotiate with the Europeans.
But internationally, there's some agreement among black universities in which they are granted certain amount of scholarships or whatever based on the history or the fact that their ancestors were enslaved, and now due to that, there's poverty or what have you. If we can have that here.
Part of the work of the committee would be to estimate the amount of money that each country would be owed based on a point system.
Guyana would be owed 3.17 trillion pounds. In the case of Guyana, we'll have a fund which would be managed by an elected board of competent people. There'll be no individual checks, but there'll be community development. And we are lucky in that we have many villages that are, discrete entities, scholarships, entrepreneurship, economic development, those types of things.
Many years ago, something tragic has happened, and many countries have reaped the benefits. And basically, we just want a little of what you have reaped, because majority of those countries have become developed, and we are still a bit on the developed earth.
Beautiful grasslands, the majestic kite falls. Well, I've got a plan. Come take my hand, and let's go to Guyana. Away, away, many mountains and rivers. Away, away. Come hear the pan play the music. Let's all just groove to it. Well, this is Guyana. Away, away.
The historic occasion of emancipation in Guyana took place 181 years ago on August 1st. This next piece will be putting the spotlight on several very important landmarks associated with the end of human bondage in the country.
As I promised in last week's episode of Guyana 411, we will continue to look at some of the struggles leading up to emancipation, as well as some of the other significant landmarks associated with Emancipation Day. As you would have learned in last week's episode, slavery was abolished in 1838, and Guyana will be celebrating 181 years of freedom on August 1, 2015. Since we have already looked at the Daemons and the African Liberation Monuments and the Daemon's Cross, along with their significance to the struggle against slavery, today we will turn our attention to the very popular 1763 monument, which is commonly known as Coffee. This bronze monument was unveiled by former President Lyndon Forbes Sampson Burnham on May 23, 1976. It commemorates the 1763 slave rebellion, which was the first revolt that came close to success. It depicts one of the country's national heroes, Coffee, the leader of this rebellion. This impressive work of art stands 15 feet high and weighs 2.5 tons. It was cut into sections, and the mold were cast and reassembled through welding. The more significant features of this treasured piece include the pointing lip of the face, which symbolizes resistance of the oppression, whilst other freedom fighters such as Accra are depicted with horn-like faces on the thighs of the sculpture. The figures of pigs and dogs being squeezed in the hands of the figure are symbolic of greed, lust, and ignorance. The shield-like face on the chest represents a spiritual guide against enemies. The face at the back of the head represents the present leaders who are continuing the struggle for the people. The map of Guyana carved on the back is a representation of the country's people, and the 18-foot plinth on which the statue rests is adorned with 5 bronze plaques representing seeking inspiration, uniting the people, destroying the enemies, control, and praise and thanksgiving. Another similar structure is the 1823 monument, which, like the 1763 monument, represents another well-structured and almost successful rebellion. These rebellions contributed to the struggle that eventually resulted in emancipation. now takes us to our feature piece, the Emancipation Monument. Located in the Bedford-Wachting Playground on the east coast of Demerara, the Emancipation Monument was constructed at a cost of 225,000 Guyana dollars as a memorial to the 62 freed Africans who established a freeholders' village shortly after winning their freedom in 1838. The foundation was laid in 1995 and the monument was completed and opened in 1996. It comprised a hand with a broken chain attached, holding a book, which sources suggest represents the book that was signed by the original purchasers of the Bedford-Wachting plantation. It represents victory, freedom, and jollification. Fun facts you should know. Both the 1763 and the 1823 monuments represents great rebellions which led up to the country's emancipation. The 1763 monument comprises various parts, each holding specific significance to the people's struggles or achievements. And the Emancipation Monument, which was unveiled in 1996, 162 years after the country's emancipation, is a symbolization of the 1838 victory.
Thank you for watching Guyana 411. Until next time, keep your chin up and your environment clean. Goodbye.